Fights with Friends on YouTube.
Yeah, yes, Fights with Friends. That name kind of came about from I was doing some UFC, what I called Fight Companion, and would kind of talk about it through fights, and people started getting chat lines, and I'm like, oh, you know, we're all friends, so it's kind of generic, but it works.
For sure. It fits into the League of Champions too, what I'm doing.
Yeah, definitely. And I have I'm a little closer to your thinking on MMA and fighting than maybe some of the other fans.
Okay.
But we'll let it go where it goes, and I'm kind of the attitude that, you know, if we're being respectful about fighters and protecting them, you know, about my opinion and stuff, some people aren't going to like it. That's fine. I'm not going to change things for that. It just, if you continue to do the right job and respect people, you know, then things will happen how they're supposed to happen.
Amen.
So, all right, I'm going to hit the button right here, and all right, we are live. This is Mike with Fights with Friends, here with UFC Ultimate Fighter, where we originally seen you on Season 2, finalist there, Luke Kumo. How you doing, man?
Mike, I say I'm tough too, even though I didn't look like it. They soon found out.
Yeah, yes, they did, and you were actually you were my favorite fighter on that series, and I don't just say that because you're here right now. That's why I kind of looked out there. You know, you had the glasses, and so I wore glasses, and so it's such a stupid thing to me when people are like, oh, you must be a nerd, you must be kind of dorky, and I get it with guys on my channel. I know they're having fun and stuff, but it's just kind of like, it just really kind of made me root for you that much more. And then the fact those, you know, those brutal elbows, I mean, that's entertaining to watch.
It's a devastating technique.
Yes, it is.
I had a coach on that season. His name was Ganyao. He came out of the Fairtex camp in Thailand. He's one of the bigger Thai champions. I think he was 185 pounds at fight weight, which means he walked around bigger than that, and he was 6'3". They had something like 200 fights. You know, they start when they're very young over there. And I remember fighting and him just yelling elbow, elbow, elbow over and over and over again. It's like, that's a game changer. But it's so devastating that they don't even allow it over there until the very final round. Because, you know, it's like going out to the bar for them. You go to a fight on Friday, you go to a fight on Saturday, and they have to have a certain amount of time in the arena, and if everybody just starts throwing bows off the bell, the night's gonna end short. So especially in the championship rounds, championship fights, they'll kind of have these gentlemen's agreements where, you know, the first round they'll just feel each other out, and they play that Thai music, which it does the same thing. It builds up over time until it's, you know, very fast paced by the end of the match.
That's very interesting. Obviously a lot different than what we're doing, you know, what we do here in the United States for the MMA. I do know there's some MMA leagues that don't allow elbows.
Right.
But can you tell me, as we get in this, how did you get on the show? How did they find you, or how did you apply for this?
Let's see, the year was 2009. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to take it back a little further. 1999. We'll go back to. We'll skip past the traditional martial arts upbringing. I did Kung Fu, which I think actually developed some of my power that I had coming up as a fighter because of the stance training. It's like having strong roots. But when I was 18, I had a falling out with the teacher, and partially was due to me being a young punk who just discovered alcohol, because I basically fell off of my training, but it didn't last too long. I missed it. I missed the training, and I was driving a cab for a job, because of the alcohol and whatever else I was going through in my life. I didn't make it through college. I had a scholarship to an art school, and I didn't even make one semester, but I started to drive for pizza delivery and a taxi cab, and I drove past a building. It said Bruce Lee's Kickboxing, something like that. Bruce Lee's martial art, or you see, he was the reason why I began martial arts training. As a teenager, my mom showed me the movie Enter the Dragon, and then I don't even know if there was internet back then, but I somehow found out that he started out with Kung Fu. So I went to the Yellow Pages, found a Kung Fu school. Fast forward, I'm driving in a cab, I see Bruce Lee's art. I go in, I meet Ray Longo. Ray Longo, my first MMA instructor.
Oh,
He
wow.
said, come back later. So I finished up my shift, I came back, and I went hard. I mean, everything I loved about Kung Fu, mixed martial arts had, and then some. But at that time, this is the very early days of UFC. And before the UFC in America, we had kickboxing, which came from the PKA, which is the Professional Karate Association. Those were the guys like Benny the Jet Urquidez, Bill Superfoot Wallace. They learned martial arts from the servicemen who came back from overseas. They learned karate and things, and they put on little boots and gloves, and they did what was called at that time American style kickboxing, where you weren't allowed to kick below the waist. And Ray Longo trained under a student of Dan Inosanto, who was one of Bruce Lee's main students. So
I've read some of his books. I've read all Bruce Lee's books too.
yeah, I mean, people call him the godfather of MMA, which I believe to be true. He had a philosophy where he said, don't limit yourself to one style. And he supposedly trained, well, he factually trained with Gene LaBelle, who was a judo practitioner, and you could see a little bit of grappling in his final movies. But Ray brought in a guy named Chai, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but he was one of the first Muay Thai practitioners to come over. And Ray has a close friend named Louis Neglia, and Louis Neglia was not on the level of people like Superfoot, but he was a karate, American style kickboxing champion, and he began to promote events along with Ray, and they did mixed events where they would have kickboxing American style, then they had international rules, which was basically Muay Thai, and that's how I started competing under Louis Neglia's banner, which eventually turned into the Ring of Combat, which I just learned that they're up to Ring of Combat 62 now. That's a local MMA feeder organization for the UFC. People like Eddie Alvarez besides me and Matt Serra and Pete Dragosel, Chris Weidman, we all came up through that circuit. And I fought in Ring of Combat #1 in the year 2001, I believe it was, as a last-minute replacement. I fought a professional kickboxing champion, and in about a minute and a half, I had taken him down and knocked him out with ground and pound because he was a strict kickboxer. I had no grappling. I was only a blue belt at the time in jiu-jitsu. But I knew enough to get on top, and he tried to punch up at me from the ground, and we just started trading punches. I had gravity on my side.
Yeah, that's not such a good position to be in. I do know one guy that from his back was able to get a little bit of leverage and throw some pretty sharp elbows on a guy named Joe Stevenson and cut him open pretty good. But
yeah, I learned that from Jeremy Horn, Ultimate Fighting legend. He has 200 MMA fights, and for a couple of my fights I went out to Salt Lake City to train with him after I had met him on The Ultimate Fighter Season 2. We hit it off, and I was like, this guy, he's like the master you go to see at the top of the mountain. And he showed me a little bit of that stuff. I got on the show because of Matt Serra, but I had seen Season 2, and I frequent a web forum called the MMA Underground, and I saw on that page they posted that they were going to be accepting applications for Season 2. So I watched Season 1, and I started to do some of the training. They had this treadmill exercise where you had to do 5 minutes at 5 miles an hour, 5 minutes at 6 miles an hour, 5 minutes at 7, and then 8, 9, and 10, 5 minutes at each, which I was able to do at home when I was rested. But then when we had to do it at the evaluation, once I had gotten onto the show, they gave it to us at the end of a 2.5-hour grueling training session. So I think I conked out at about 2 minutes into 9 miles per hour. But I put together a video with the help of my friend, kind of interviewing me and a little bit of training footage, and I believe that they were looking for people from all across the nation. They had a guy from Hawaii, Stevenson's from California, they had Marcus Davis from Maine, some kid from Minnesota, Brazil. They had George Gurgel, he was from Brazil, he came to America, and I was the New York guy. I remember in the meeting room with the producers, the guy from Spike TV, he says, "I know you have a New York asshole inside. What's it gonna take to come out?" Because I was like, you know, I was being respectful. I came up in a traditional martial arts school, and this is way before the days of shit talking your way to a title fight.
Yeah, you always hit me as like that calm, respectful, kind of gentle guy. I mean, you obviously don't want to piss you off and fill that elbow, but very respectful guy.
Yeah, I mean, I was known as the silent assassin. I got that name from Nick Serra, Matt's younger brother, the Mad Monkey. And in jiu-jitsu, you always get a nickname, and it's supposed to be kind of like an underhanded compliment. You know, you get names like The Thing, who was a guy with red hair. They said it reminded them of The Thing, was an orange superhero made out of rocks. You know, they called me the silent assassin because I didn't really talk much, but I performed well. And
yeah, I know you even came into the cage stage a few times with that ski mask on. Kind of seem to embrace that a little bit.
I was developing an entrance attire for Japan. They sent over somebody to scout me out, and had things worked out differently, I might have been able to do it. But you know, I do have plans still to take my brand overseas.